to welcome Daniel J. Bowen.
Hello, hello.
Hello and welcome, Daniel. I'm so glad to have you with us here on the TV network today.
So glad to be here. Thanks for the invitation.
We thank you for taking the time. For those that are joining us, Daniel is a pianist. He writes music for orchestras. He's awesome. I had the privilege to meet him at a program during Black History Month, and I got to see a little bit of what he does, and the little bit that I saw that he does inspired me to bring him on this TV network. We also, Bishop and I, got to go and attend a concert that he did for free for the community, and it was awesome. It was packed in there. We were able to take a couple of our grandkids that we were able to and take and let them hear what Daniel is doing, and it was just an awesome experience. So today we're going to talk about Daniel's story and his song and why he does what he does. So Daniel, I want you to share with our listening audience how you got started in music. What first inspired you to do what you're doing today?
Thank you for all your support and for coming to the show and everything. It's great to know that you were in the building. Thank you for your support. So my early beginnings started in church. My first instrument was the drums, and I played drums in church and school band. And there were so many drummers in church at the time that I was thinking, man, I should learn another instrument. It's getting a little crowded, right?
Yes.
And I had my eyes on the piano, and I would, tinker around and try to learn as much as I could. I had some mentors and some individuals around me that I could reach for, but it wasn't until I was about 12 or 13 years old when the current music director passed away suddenly, and I knew enough for the church to feel like I was next in line. And so
Right.
it was an abrupt shift because you go from, being on the sidelines or even as a drummer, typically you're not leading a lot of
Right.
times. It's usually the pianist in that type of environment that is leading or teaching the choir or teaching the band. So I went from sort of, casually playing a song or two on the drums every week to being the main pianist for a church every Sunday. And it was definitely difficult and challenging for me at that age. I was, early middle school at the time. And I remember a lot of Saturday nights calling my grandmother, trying to get her to sing the hymns to me. And I just couldn't pick them up. There was no YouTube. So it was a lot of tough Saturday nights for me and very challenging, but it definitely sped up my trajectory, I think, in this music thing.
Right.
And, really pushed me and developed a lot of skills in leadership and communication and just a lot of transferable skills that I use today. But that was essentially the origins of it, and it just grew from there.
Wow. It's the number 12. I started doing things in the music and directing choirs at age 12. And it's amazing. You said around 12, you're being thrust into doing and leading instead of being on the backside. But God was training you all along on the backside. You just didn't realize it.
For sure.
Yeah. So that is really awesome. So you got your start in the church, as most of us have. And after doing that, did you ever go to school for music, or is what you're doing more of the gift that God gave you?
Yeah, that was another journey within itself. I continued to play by ear and would find mentors and when I could to help. There's a lot of self-learning and independent study in this journey. I mean, I'd say self-taught mostly, but you always find help when you can.
That's right.
But yeah, so I just continued that journey through high school. After high school, you know, I had the ability to go to college. I was accepted to several schools, but I didn't
Mm-hmm.
feel there was two things. One, the location. I wasn't feeling called to leave the area at the time, and I knew if I wanted to go to a music school
Mm-hmm.
at the time, I would have preferred to go somewhere like Los Angeles or New York City or something like that. And so I just, you know, I prayed about it,
Right.
and my mom and I went to NYU and checked it out. And, you know, I had a moment where I kind of laid my hand on the school and just did a silent prayer and said, Father, you know, if this is not your will, then let them reject me. Because I was more
Right.
concerned about being in that divine space where I needed to be.
That's
I
right.
didn't had the
Yes.
patience, and I didn't really want to rush the process. Around that
Right.
12, 13, 14 age, I did have the opportunity to move to California. My uncle lived out there, and he met a producer, and I sent some music over. And the guy flew me one-way ticket the day after school let out, and I met some of my favorite artists. I went to Santana's recording studio, which he was a big deal in the early 2000s. And you know, I was able to make some money playing gigs, and I was about to start doing recording studio stuff and touring at that young age. And again, it was that silent voice telling me now is not the time. And so I flew back
Right.
home. And so I've always had this uh, discernment to
Mm-hmm.
follow the instinct and the path that I felt was laid out for me. And so
Right.
ultimately, I decided not to pursue college, but it wasn't easy. You know, my family expected it. I
Yeah.
wanted to be an aeronautical engineer. I wanted to be a pilot really before music. So I was always, you know, studying AP courses in high school, and I think my family was mostly anticipating me to make that move. Not
Yes.
many individuals in my family had made that college move. So definitely there was some shock and awe in that whole process. And it wasn't like I was making $1 million coming out of high school. So,
Right.
you know, it was a challenge, but ultimately I wanted to protect the musical voice that I had. And I was also a little nervous about how institutions can sort of chip away at that
Mm-hmm.
uh, unique voice that you're giving at a young age. And
Right.
they sort of sometimes teach you to strip it all away and rebuild it. And I just
Mm-hmm.
felt like I needed to protect that at the time.
Wow. Well, I'm really like, I know how God gives us the gifts. Um, a lot of what He gave me, I'm protect, basically play by ear, and so I know that the gift that I have is from God. Um, like today, you were just talking about how the fact we didn't have YouTube, but now you can. All the chords are out there for you. You just turn on a YouTube video and learn it. Whereas when I was coming up, I had to listen to the song over and over. I had the ear. So I probably would have always played in the key of C. So, but he told me you can do this. And so it's those mentors, as you mentioned, that kind of help you or push you along. But just like you, mostly what I did, you self-taught. God taught you what to do. So I have heard you play the piano. So I'm like, okay, so you didn't go to school for that? That is awesome. That is
Thank
awesome.
you.
I heard you him play, listeners, when we went to this concert, and it was awesome. Everything was done so professionally, and the artists that you had, or those that are musically gifted to do what they do, the whole production was awesome. And
Thank you.
I'm thankful that I had the opportunity to listen and to be there and to watch all the children and the different ones who came up on the stage and say different things. So, with getting started in your music and doing what you're doing, how did we go from directing a choir at the church and becoming the main MD into doing what you're doing now with Symphony 21, which is an orchestra? Where did that vision come from?
Yeah. So some things to unpack. I think at the time, I was able to make an investment into this new keyboard that it came out, and it was an opportunity for me to learn how to start producing music, start sequencing. Music is when you basically can record one track at a time and continue to layer and layer. And that's what when we hear
Right.
the songs on, the radio or Spotify or YouTube or whatever, we're hearing these layered productions. And that was a segue into learning about that. And it wasn't something that I picked up on right away, but a lot of my friends were rapping at the time. And so I was going for anywhere from making beats to, you know, just making any type of music I could, but all the
Right.
music that I was making always had an orchestral element to it. Sometimes I would take a Mozart CD and sample it, which is basically recording sections of a piece of music and integrating it into your production, which is basically what hip hop is founded on. And so I was doing a lot of that, and I just had this orchestral sound. I wasn't listening to orchestra on the radio. I wasn't listening to classical music. It was sort of just something that I was drawn to, and it took me many years later to really connect all the dots. But I'd say from there, my church was having special events, and I asked the pastor if I could bring in a violin player. Again, I was self-taught. I could barely read music. That never
Wow.
worked out for me when I would try to take lessons to read music. And so I would
Yes.
just start with one player at a time. I'd bring one violinist in, and I through the technology, I'd figure out a way to translate my notes into sheet music, but it was only for one player, so it wasn't too difficult. I could meet with the player ahead of time, and they could sort of give me a master class on things I may have done right or wrong. And so I just accumulate that knowledge over time. And then maybe a few years after that, I had musician friends that they were starting their producer careers. And one in particular asked for a string arrangement for their song that was coming out. And that would require, a few different players, not just one this time. And so,
Right.
I started growing and doing that more and doing a lot of string arranging for producers that were working for artists like Miranda Curtis and Jason Nelson and Brian Courtney Wilson.
Wow.
A lot of I know your audience are familiar with those names. So and so that grew, just doing a lot of arranging. At the same time, now I'm getting older. I'm starting to go to orchestral
Yes.
concerts. I'm starting to travel and see orchestras because now I'm really getting into it. I want to see the orchestra live in a larger sense, because the budgets at that time were only enough for me to hire 4 players. So I still hadn't reached that orchestral level yet. And so I'd go to
Right.
these events, and I wasn't really seeing anyone in the room that looked like me a lot. Often the demographic was white couples from
Right.
60 to 70 years old was pretty much the demographic. So one thing I noticed that not only were there not any people of color in the audience, but there were no young people in the audience.
Wow.
The children of the 60 to 70-year old, the baby boomers weren't there, their grandkids weren't there. So I felt like there was this disconnect between this orchestral experience and sort of the younger audience, mid-aged younger audiences, across all demographics. So during that time, I'm releasing my first album or EP called Blood Moon, and that's a
Hmm.
story within itself if you want to ask about that. But essentially, it was this combination of orchestral sounds and electronic sounds, reminiscent of something that would be in like a film score, a cinematic sound. And I was asked to perform it live in Baltimore at a festival called Artscape.
Hmm.
And it was sort of something that I wasn't expecting. It was an amazing night. And I was able to put together some visuals because I'm also a filmmaker. So I was able to edit some visuals and put those
Wow.
with the show. And it was a multimedia orchestral experience, something that I felt like was the best way to interpret Blood Moon live. And
Wow.
I left that show coming back home to the Eastern Shore, which is, as you know, a more rural area. It's not Baltimore City by any means. And so I come back home and think, man, I'd love to do something like that here. Uh,
Mm-hmm.
but I don't want to do it as an artist. I'd love to do it in a way that is more community driven and something that can be a little more legacy founded and can last longer than just a one-off concert. And so I just began to meditate on how that could be done. And that was essentially the orchestral model of Symphony 21 through that concert in Baltimore that I did.
Wow.
And that concert was very diverse. And it gave me a hint that if I could diversify the sound and the image
Mm-hmm.
of the orchestra, whether it's the conductor on the stage, being myself, or the musicians on the stage, the team, the
Mm-hmm.
board, all of these things, because at the time and still today, there's only 4% representation in the orchestras of musicians of color. And it's even
Yes.
lower for conductors and lower for board members. And so my thought was, man, if I could start something that was diverse enough in the way it sounded and the way it looked, then I think I could bring the community together and create diverse audiences and prolong the life of orchestral music as
Yes.
we experience it today. And so that's how Symphony 21 was born. Now, again, this was still new to me because now I'm conducting larger ensembles and I'm putting together larger shows. So
Mm-hmm.
it's learning on the job, but that's what I was doing back at 12 years old. It was I think that experience gave me the courage to fight through any of the insecurities or lack of belief that I could do this and just give it a shot. So
Yes. Well, I'm telling you, for those who haven't seen Daniel in action and had the opportunity to hear his orchestra play, we are going to have video footage where you can you get a chance to hear some of the music that God has inspired this young man to do, and the many other artists or gifted musicians that are working along with him. They are truly gifted. Um, and just to know that God is able to take us, we a lot of times don't think that we can do something if we don't have these certain skills. But if you are gifted by God, He can take what the foolish things, as they say, and confound the wise, because He is the gift giver. And just by you being willing to step out there and try and do what God has given you to do and take that vision, uh, like I said, I just am in awe of what you have already done. And I know that God has so many other great things inspired or to do through your music ministry and through this orchestra. How many? I know you've been taking it on tour, and I know that this is not a program that is funded to a certain degree. Am I right? How are you doing this program financially?
yeah, another thing, I'd never been a nonprofit director, of course. I've always been an entrepreneur. I've never had a 9 to 5. And so even in middle school, high school, I was creating things out of paper and selling them to my friends. I mean, I've always been someone that had an entrepreneurial spirit, but this was a new venture, how to fund something that's not based on, profits. It's not based on selling. It's based on sort of selling the idea and the vision and getting corporate companies, corporate sponsors to donate, getting grants from the government, from local foundations. That was all new. And
Wow.
so I knew that this world operates based on who you know. And so I
Right. That's
spend
true.
a lot more time building relationships than I do sort of having my hand out. It's more like who can I connect with, that if I can find one person
Right.
that believes in this, then I know that person will
Mm-hmm.
tell someone else. And so it was
Wow.
very key for me to find those individuals, and also find those individuals that are outside of our communities. I mean, it's no mystery that most of the world is not ran by us. You know, most of the corporations, like we could dribble the basketball, but we probably won't own the team. And so,
Yes.
you have to navigate strategically and build relationships in and outside of your community in order to succeed. And so it was very important to garner the support of everyone involved. And so I was able to find some community leaders that would introduce me to this person, introduce me to that person, and it was just all about the pitch. Now the first show was difficult to sell because I didn't have anything, so it was a lot. I had to invest a lot of my own money.
Right.
But I was able to get 1 grand and get it started. And my first show was Blood Moon, so it wasn't like I had to do a lot of other material, and so I kept it pretty simple, kept the ensemble small, um, and reached out to Salisbury University to see if I could rent the facility, and it worked out. But it's basically like I knew I had to capture great photos and video to be able to get more support for the next show.
Right.
So yeah, it's really about who you know, and building those relationships, and figuring out a way to sell the vision, communicate it in a way that those that you're speaking to see the benefits.
Mm-hmm.
And I knew that this was something that had never been done in this area, and it's really not being done anywhere in the world in this same unique way, specifically catering to rural audiences. A lot of things that are being done in the cities, in metropolitan areas. And so this is a
Right.
very unique thing that I think is now starting to gain even more support from the community.
Yeah,
So
it's more
grants and corporate sponsors, and really just tapping into some of the individuals in the community that could really help.
awesome. So if there's somebody that's watching tonight, um, or watching the show that wants to support, how can they support you? Can you give us your website? And I'd like you to also mention if you have any upcoming events that we can also advertise as well. But knowing your website, how they can keep up and follow you and possibly donate, how can they do that?
Yeah, our website is symphony21.org, and you can find us on social media at symphony21.org as well. And on the website, there's places to find out more information about us if we have any upcoming events, and you can donate and support there as well. We're looking at doing a lot more in the community, like master classes and workshops for young students. We currently tour schools, elementary schools all over the Eastern Shore, bringing in some of these amazing artists. And this year we toured about 700 students prior to our concert, and so we're always trying to inspire students to get involved in music, get involved in the orchestra, and consider music as a career, or music technology or visual arts, any of these areas that are connected to putting together this type of show. We try to inspire students to get involved.
Awesome. And you're definitely inspiring other individuals, not only the adults, but especially the children that you're trying to reach. I have was witnessing of the ones that came up on the stage asking questions, even some that hadn't even started music before they had been in one of your shows, and they're now either going to band, and they're getting involved in some type of orchestra type instrument. And it was just really nice to watch the kids express themselves and stand up and talk. And it takes a lot. And as I said,
Yeah.
just to watch, I would never have known that you have done all of this, of course, by the gifting of God, self-taught. Oh my God. So I'm just telling you, you guys are going to really enjoy some video footage from the concert that we went to. We also have some other footage so you can see some photos of things that Daniel is doing, and he is an awesome pianist. Daniel, thank you for joining us today, and we're looking forward to hearing more from you in the
Thanks for
near
having
future.
me. Thank you so much.